was going to start, the discussion would start as early. Oh, there he is. He's right there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, we're on your agenda item for Parks and Rec.
Just in time.
Perfect timing. So we got the letter. We discussed getting a letter from Dave Del Torio, just documenting, site conditions out there. So this looks good.
Okay. I was hoping Dave would come, but I think he just found out he had COVID.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. He and I toured the property last week. He seemed satisfied with the conditions and that work was completed, that we said was completed.
Yep.
He didn't have any issues with anything.
Okay. The only hiccup we have is the letter that he sent us isn't signed.
Okay.
He just, he sent I guess this is a draft copy to Kim that's unsigned. So we would just need a signed version to close out the COC.
Okay.
But I think everything else looks good, it's just, yeah, no, sorry.
Do you accept the motion contingent on that being signed, or do we have to wait?
I guess, I'd like to have a signed copy, Kim. I don't know what if his intention was to sign it or just provide it.
Could I provide it to Kim? That'd be satisfactory if I could provide it to Kim.
I guess we can vote, vote on closing the COC subject to receiving the signed letter. Kim, is that okay? Okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, it's not an outside party, it's within the town.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. So I want to do that. If we can get a motion to close the COC for Parks and Rec, Sandy Beach. Once the, subject to the signed letter from Dave being received by Kim. Yeah, second please. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
Jay.
I
Yep.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the patience with this.
Get
Sure.
Dave to sign.
Okay. 0 Pond Street, this is the Hopkinton Town Forest, an exemption request for a bridge installation.
Yep, so this is from OSPC. This is the town forest parcel. There's a map in your packet. So they're looking at installing a bridge. It's very similar to the other bridges that we've been looking at lately. 8 feet in length, 21 inches wide. And then there's a little picture of the area in question. The OSPC has told me that they don't think that it's a jurisdictional wetland. It looks kind of wet in the photo, but I have not pulled closure. I didn't hike out there to check it out. But the application does seem to be in line with the other types of proposals that we've approved in the past.
Okay, I think this is pretty straightforward. Any questions or comments from the commission? Okay, and it's an exemption request, so we don't need to vote on it. So does that sound okay to everyone? Yep. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an informal discussion for 0 West Main Street. Sarah King. Hi, Mrs. King. You can come on up if you'd like. Good evening.
And through the chair, you guys also have some supporting documentation in your packets, including 2 historic maps to reference for this discussion.
Okay.
So Sarah, do you want to tell us about your plans?
Yeah, sure. Thank you all for allowing me to be here, for all the work you do. Yeah, just basically in short, we purchased this property privately with the goal of, like with the vision of having a yurt village for elders with medical clinic, prayer space. Anyway, something that's like of communal benefit. That's why we purchased the land. We didn't purchase it for any financial like investment or anything like that. We bought it, there's a lot more wetland than we thought there was when we first bought it. It's 11 acres. The whole frontage is wetland. We didn't realize that when we first bought it. We also didn't realize when we first bought it, there's 2 easements in the back. And so we, through the design group that we're working with, they uncovered that. And so I'm here to just kind of see if it might be possible to have an exemption to come over the wetland in the frontage to just make the driveway. The actual yurt proposal would still be on the, the sort of the dry upland. There's enough space there, but specifically just for the driveway from the main frontage, because from what I understand, the easements are, they only permit for single, again, we didn't know this when we bought it, but single family houses on those 4 lots, which we bought contiguous as like one property. But basically, those would not permit like, a community benefit like we intended it. It would just be limited to 1 family homes, those easements from School Street from the backside. So what we're proposing is, or what we're requesting is to see if it might be possible to have an exception to come over the wetland in, with some sort of a bridge or something that's minimally invasive, and just so that we could potentially have that again, sort of community benefit vision that we initially intended for it, for the place.
Okay. Have you tried to, so the easements were negotiated with the abutting property owners, is that correct?
So the best of my knowledge, those were there like from a long time ago, and when I bought the land, I think it was maybe 2 years ago now, something like that. I wasn't aware of that at all. I thought we could just come right across the front. The wetland is not that obvious. Like, I walked the land myself, and it's really not that obvious. It's sort of like I don't know if vernal stream is the right word, but it's not like an obvious wet body of water that a lay person could recognize. So anyway, I didn't appreciate there was so much wetland at the frontage. So yeah, I think that those agreements are pre-existing. My guess is that probably the property owners, I'm not sure how, aware they are of them, but because the houses are kind of built pretty close to it. And there's just woods through there. So I think those are just very old, and they're not actual driveways at this current point. You'd have to...
Right, yeah.
So you're looking at lot 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those
yeah, exactly. I just bought them as one contiguous piece. I think the previous owner had, I think it was him who sectioned them out. But yeah, we just bought them as one whole, again, for this intended purpose.
Jeff, question?
Sure, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So if you look at the plan of land from Cornerstone, and you look at the easement, if that is the easement, it does access all 4 lots.
Yeah, you're right. The easements do access it. There's 2 easements.
Right.
Yeah, 2 go to 2 lots, and then, one goes to 2 lots, and then another one goes to 2 lots. But the issue is just, so they do access them, but the issue is just that it's a limit in the traffic that can come through there. Like, our goal is to actually create this community space that's like, has much more volume. I don't want to say much more, but has more volume than a single family home. Because those easements would go literally, like, some of these houses are built like right up against that. So it would just be going, right by their bedroom window, that driveway probably. So I think, I personally wouldn't really go to those neighbors and say, I wouldn't push them for like a higher access road, because it's just not the right, anyway.
The other plan, the compiled existing conditions / feasibility plan, shows access to 2 lots, and then the other 2 via what appears to be the existing easement. You're saying that you don't like this because...
No, my understanding is that existing easement is limited like, it's limited only to a single-family home on each lot. So that,
These aren't single families?
no, it's just all raw acreage right now. It's just
No,
all raw
no,
parcels.
what's the proposed, what's
So-
this proposal here? Are those not single-family residents?
You know, this is.
Or
we had-
condominiums or something?
No, so we had, yeah, this was, sorry, in the verbiage, not in there. The design group that we hired to kind of look at this, help us look at this, when they looked at it, he realized currently it's zoned as for single-family homes, that the easement like has that wording in it only for a single-family home. And so he just put that on there, as what is currently allowed, but that is not our vision at all. This is just the design groups, like, they're just showing what is currently permitted through the easements, but it's not what we're seeking at all.
So you want to have more, I'll say dwellings, because they are in the matter of
Yeah,
ownership.
they're yurts, I don't know, anyway.
Yeah, no, I know what a yurt
Anyway,
is. Let's
yeah.
call each yurt a dwelling. How many
Yeah,
yurts you
exactly,
can
so
put?
there's, I don't know, it would depend on what works with, all the, all y'all, and, but I would say maybe, I don't know, 10, something like that,
Okay.
8 to 10.
And what's
but-
so what is the
The 30 by
square
30.
footage of the?
The largest one is 30 by 30, and that would be like the community center prayer space, and then maybe one medical clinic of that size, and then there would be the smaller ones for the individual units. And they sit above the ground, so there's no actual like footprint really. It's all permeable. Since we didn't have permission yet for this land, we do have one set up on our property, so if anyone's interested, we can share pictures or tours, but so that would be for the yurts. And again, it's just, we would be perfectly happy with the easements, but my understanding from talking with our design team is that, and just looking at the space, because we live 5 minutes away from here in Upton, is that it's not really, I don't think it would be, basically, my understanding is that the easements are only for one family home, and it makes sense because it literally goes by people, like, each house is so close to that place where it's going to go by.
Mm-hmm.
So it would just, we're seeking permission to potentially enter from the front in whatever is the least minimally invasive way, just for the driveway, and then all the structures would be up
Yeah, so it looks
off
like,
of that.
it looks like the crossing, to have the minimal impact to the resource areas would be at lot 2, where it kind of pinches in there, the wetland.
Right.
And, that is something, a crossing like that is something that's permittable. We have done it. We wouldn't be able to do it as an exemption. It would still need to go through like the formal NOI process.
I'm just going to take a little note.
Yeah.
Or lot 3, right, Jeff?
Yeah, lot 3 is,
Oh, you got, yeah, okay, lot 2, right?
see where it kind of pinches off, like in the center of lot 2 there?
Yeah. All right, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
I have 2, but I forgot the first one. Oh, no, that was one of them. Are you intending to combine these 4 lots
Yes,
legally?
sir. I would like to, just because honestly, I'm
Okay.
a simple person, and I would like to do that.
Well, that might serve several purposes. Right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, it's something that would be permittable under a notice of intent.
Okay.
Depending on what kind of vehicles you intend to have crossing that. I'm sure the fire department would want.
That's what I was, that was my understanding, that it needs to be.
Yeah, so you'd
sufficient
have to
enough.
be able to support, the emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
So, it can get very costly
Yeah.
to put a bridge in like that. So I don't know this isn't really a wetland issue, this is more just a,
Zoning kind of, yeah.
yeah, for you, I don't know what your budget is for this, but, so you can put a bridge there, and then the commission would look for replication of the area that's disturbed by the bridge. So you'd have to put like a wetland, proposal wetland replication area somewhere on the site
You
to
mean, like,
mitigate.
even if it's not actually making physical contact with the wetland,
Yeah, because you're gonna need
or
to,
just the structural parts?
yeah, because there's gonna be, when you put the bridge in, there'll be grading that you're gonna need to do. There'll be, the wetland below the bridge is impacted because it's being covered by the bridge now, right?
Okay.
So just, I'm just throwing this out there for you to understand, what the cost associated with doing something like this is, because it's not inexpensive.
Yeah,
It's very expensive.
okay.
It can get very expensive.
Is the bridge like the only permissible, or is there any other, it's not my area, but is there any other option that you all have like approved, or that you all have seen work well, as a solution? Or is bridge really the only kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know what other,
It's an
Culvert
intermittent
is
stream,
fine.
so it's not,
Box culvert, I mean, it's hard to say because you don't know how wide it is.
The stream itself is, I don't know what you, so the wetland, what's termed wetland is a wide swath there, but this actual stream itself is, I would say, no greater than the width of this. At the widest place, usually you can't even see it. Yeah, I don't know.
yes, go ahead, Jim.
While we're thinking about that, if these are combined into one lot, one legal lot, then there would be one notice of intent with the plan, with all of the structures, as opposed to the crossing and maybe what structures are on lot 2, and then separately a notice of intent for lots 1, 3, and 4.
Okay. So combining them legally into one, and then you would have one notice
Well,
of
then you
intent.
have one notice of intent with the whole project, basically,
Okay. So
as
simplify
opposed to
it.
individual lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you may or may not need a notice of intent for the utes or whatever other work you're doing out there. If it's in the,
Upper part. Yeah.
if it's outside the resource areas, then you wouldn't need to
Right.
get a permit through the commission, right?
Right.
It would just be the crossing.
Right.
But if you're planning disturbance of the buffer zone,
it would be the crossing and any like tree clearing,
Yeah, it is very little.
within the
the
buffer zone.
access road and the buffer, yeah.
Yeah,
But in any event, you'll show the development, if you will, on the plan that has the crossing, right? We want to know where the structures are going generally, so we can confirm that they're not in or where
Right.
they are.
I think so, yeah.
Through the chair.
yep,
If I
go ahead,
could
Ted.
just point out as well, I don't know, may I call you Sarah?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I don't know, Sarah, since you were talking about the bridge and just the wetland itself, if you're aware of the concern about buffer around the wetland.
Yeah.
And when it comes to replication, there would be buffer zone impacts figured into that discussion as well. But the reason I bring it up is I don't know how to picture 10 yurts, including a 30 by 30 on this map.
Yeah.
But you'd have to think ahead, I think, about not going or barely going inside that 100-foot buffer zone as you consider where you're going to put these 10
Oh, yeah,
structures.
definitely. And I think that is why, like, their drawing of the single-family homes kind of helps me a little bit, but I think there is enough space in
Okay,
there.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
you were aware, since I hadn't
Yeah.
heard you mention buffer
Yeah,
zone.
thank you. Thank you.
Lots
thank
are
you.
pretty deep, right?
No, I don't have a scale, so, and I can't picture it.
Yeah.
So I just thought I would throw it out there.
Yeah, no, thank you. But I hear what you're saying, that not only the wetland, but the actual buffer zone
Or the driveway,
would
right.
be, you have to like reproduce that as well, meaning,
It would be, yes, part of our discussion anyway.
okay.
So I like that Jeff pointed out the cost of that as you plan forward, because the
Yeah.
replication cost.
When you say replication, what do you
It
mean?
means essentially, well, Jeff, could
Like
you?
setting aside some, like, of the upper land that,
Yeah, so when you put the bridge in and you figure out the disturbance related to the grading and that type of thing, you determine like a square footage of the resource area that's been disturbed,
okay,
and then under the bylaw, you have to replicate that somewhere else on the site at a 1.5 to 1. So, if it's 500 square feet, or 1,000 square feet that you disturb, then, a 1,500 square foot replication area would be required.
Meaning you, in some spots, you say this will now become wetlands.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Kim, go ahead. What?
I was just gonna say the same thing. Replication means you create wetlands.
Okay. I mean, I don't know, maybe this is for down the road, but I mean, our hope is that the whole thing is natural, like, we're not planning to use like grass, I want to keep forest everywhere, even where it's like in the upper part, except for gardens, which are gonna be all organic and maybe, anyway, so I think, I'm not sure if that, I don't, my hope is that like the whole entire space is actually like, yeah, except for where your star is like pristine, and we're definitely not planning on like creating a lawn or anything like that.
I don't.
But yeah, no, thank you
Yeah.
for mentioning it. So you mentioned a culvert, I'm not trying to. We want the best for the land, and whatever works well, is what we want to look for. But is that like possibly an option, or the culvert potentially, or is it really just a bridge?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a type of crossing, so it's like a type of bridge, it's just a culvert as opposed to something that's, above.
Yeah.
So it's like a box culvert, you would put it into the wetland, into the resource area. So there's more disturbance with a box culvert than there would if you just put like a span going
Yeah.
across, an elevated span. Kim, does that make sense?
It does. The only reason I think about that in this space is because the actual water is so small. Anyway, I'm not like looking for I want what's best, but it's just that piece is very small.
Having looked into both clear span bridges and building box culverts with embankments and so forth, you'd be surprised that the cost of a bridge might be less and considerably less. So you should look into it.
Yeah, you would have to, I mean, I guess, it is something that's permittable. You would need to have an engineer
Yeah.
take a look at it and make recommendations to you as to what they think is appropriate.
Okay.
Based on, and you might want to talk to the fire department to find out, what their requirements are, because, to get one of the large fire trucks over this, might need to be considerably larger than what you're kind of envisioning.
Yeah. Well, somebody had mentioned that early on, so I did have that kind of in mind.
Okay.
But yeah.
But just, so there's the cost of the structure.
But for you all, culvert or bridge would potentially be permissible as long as it seems to make sense with our engineer team.
Yep.
Okay.
And then just, you have the replication area that would need to be done, so there's a cost associated with that.
When you say, let's say, because all of the land is pure forest right now.
Right.
Let's say we just leave a land that's uplands forest, which we intend to do. Is that considered like replication if we just kind of set it aside, or do we have to like specifically
Yeah, you would
plant
need,
the plants that are at the wetland? But
Yeah,
that would be kind of
they would
weird
need
because
to-
they're not naturally growing there. And
right,
now
it would need to be wetland, a wetland habitat that would need to be reproduced, not upland habitat. So the wetland, the portion of the wetland that's being disturbed would need to be recreated at 1.5 times the size in another portion of the site on lot 3 or 4 where the wetland area is.
It is kind of a conundrum that we run into when it's proposed to create wetland in forest area
wetland.
and take down trees. Like, that's usually when we have a site, like, we try and look for areas that are already degraded or, that can be improved is the ideal wetland replication area.
Yeah.
These are always like,
Right.
these
Yeah,
are really
'cause-
tough. We wrestle with them
yeah, because obviously you would not want to disturb it's pure. The whole thing is pure forest, so you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to like disturb pure forest. And obviously, if there's not if those species aren't naturally growing there, then they're probably not meant to grow there. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
it's
you
kind of-
have to, like, to get the wetland replication area, a lot of times you have to dig down so that the soils are wet.
That would be
You know
so
what I mean? Like, you
sad
have
to
to-
dig down on this, all that, like, that soil that's been building up for
There
like
might be, just
years.
looking at the map, there might be replication along West Main Street, where the wetland gets very close to West Main Street.
I think that whole thing though is buffer. It's either wetland or buffer. Like there's like nothing across the whole frontage that we can. it's
Yeah, I mean,
all
we're not
wetland
gonna
or
figure
buffer.
this out
Yeah, no,
tonight,
no.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So we're just kinda giving you the,
But is it
Yeah.
mandatory like that?
It's mandatory through this Wetland Protection Act.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like that replication of wetland. Is it mandatory to disturb the pure land, or is it possible to kind of find some way to kind of like have it be natural, or have if there are already wetland species in there? Because that's honestly, I'll be straight with you. This is my whole point in this whole type of plan with the yurts and everything is actually to not disturb things. I mean, if you came to my own home, like we have, anyway, that's what we do. That's how we roll, and I don't want to. That would be so sad to be trying to do this whole natural project, and then we have to like scrape up an acre of forest. I don't have the heart to do that.
yeah, go ahead, Kim.
The best way to have the no disturbance is to use the existing easements.
Oh, that's so smart.
I don't know if you can, if at all, like we've been saying, if you've
Although
approached
I don't know how the
existing-
neighbors would feel.
If you've approached them about negotiating the easements, I don't know. But the Wetlands Protection Act does require that 1-to-1 or the 1 to 1.5 in our regulations. And the reason for that is because of flood storage. Wetlands provide flood storage. And so if you're filling in, you got to provide somewhere else on your site where you're essentially digging, or else that flood storage capacity is pushed onto your neighbors. Because wetlands are like big sponges, and that's why the act says that. So it's hard to grapple with, but there is some other functions of the wetland that's being provided to the public that needs to kind of be replicated.
Okay, maybe, yeah, I don't want to keep y'all. There's other people. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about those details. But it sounds like, in summary, that it is possible to come across here by either bridge or culvert with, through the processes y'all mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah. May I just offer one other thought? to
Sure,
consider?
yeah.
I'm not an engineer at all, but it's possible that you could, for the heavier traffic, the cars, have a smaller bridge over the wetlands and use the easement for your emergency access.
That's a really good
And
idea.
then maybe you can make a smaller, less impactful crossing.
That's a good idea.
And then the neighbors aren't worried about all the traffic going right past their house unless there's an emergency.
That's a really good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
You should be an engineer.
I don't.
Yeah, that might be a good compromise, you know?
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you
Yeah.
all very much.
All right, you're welcome.
It sounds
Good luck.
beautiful. I hope
Aw.
that something works out.
God willing, yeah.
water tank right there.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Okay, moving along. Okay, let's move on to the continued hearings. Hodges, 18 Falcon Ridge Drive. This is a continuation of a notice of intent for patio site work and septic. Good evening, Mr. Markland. Good evening, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good, thanks.
Joe Macrodant, joined by homeowner Matt Hodges. Since we last before the commission, we have made some additions to the site and to the plans. I thought I'd just take a second to update everybody on where we're at and where we can see where it takes us.
Okay.
This quick summary is loosely based on the memo from Joe Orzel at Lucas Environmental from May 20th. The fill pile that was up here along the westerly side that was unattended has now been tarped. This location here, Matt has gone and installed some tarps to keep the rainwater, stormwater off of those piles, and has installed some silt fencing temporarily, which does not show up on this plan, but has been installed by Matt entrenched in, based on a comment from Joe Orzel, in that location to stabilize that one pile there. During a recent site walk with Joe, we examined this area of the easterly wetlands associated with intermittent stream and have made changes. A4 was shifted uphill, A5 was shifted uphill, and an additional flag 4A was added in that location. So our BBW went from that dash line to the green line. So it came uphill, if you will, 4 or 5 feet. And we have adjusted these buffer zones on the plan accordingly because of that. I think a comment was made about the history based on the plans from 2001 when this home was originally developed. There was an area set aside on that sketch plan for the planting of some trees. We assumed on this side of the table that it was to offset buffer zone lost to the driveway crossing to access the home. We have located 11 trees, mature trees, maples and oaks, predominantly oaks, out in this location here, which generally syncs up with that plan from 2001. The forms that I had inadvertently checked a couple of boxes, those forms, were updated and new copies submitted over to Kim over at the Conservation Office. So I think we covered most of the concerns raised in that memo from Joe with the changes to the site and to the plan.
Okay. And then the PIBs, I think we discussed those, so the applicant's amenable to putting the PIBs.
Yeah, we assume signs, if we have trees that are close, have not proposed to be installed. It seemed a little ahead of ourselves to establish that location now. We are well aware of our requirement to put those in. We just assumed a judicious spot at the end of construction rather than well ahead of it. But we're willing to go either way. We will be putting them in, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Right, so are they depicted on the plan?
No, they are not. The idea was the posts, medallion signs, if there was not a tree available. I just was leery of saying that exact location and then in a few months' time debating why we shifted it 5 or 10 feet left.
But the line is established, that they would be placed along.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. This here in orange is our erosion control barrier. So my expectation is somewhere along that limit of work, the PIB will be established.
Okay. And then anything beyond that would be undisturbed going forward. Right. Okay. Kim, anything else on your end?
Just kind of the remaining notes from Lucas. I appreciate you guys adding the trees that were permitted as part of the buffer zone restoration. Joe did note that underneath the trees is being maintained as established lawn, and that is within the 0 to 50 area. So I'm not sure if as part of this application, once the PIBs are established, if that will be allowed to naturalize.
Yeah, frankly, we mow it probably once a year because
Okay.
it doesn't grow that much. It's not like the rest of the grass, so I'm fine letting it grow if that's the case. I wasn't aware that it couldn't be mowed, so.
Okay. And then Joe also did mention, and it's visible, sorry, this board is a little bit difficult to control. It's visible on this old 2001 plan. There was a wetland replication area on this site. The commission did issue a certificate of compliance certifying it. I think it was about 2004. And Joe indicates in his letter that it's no longer functioning as a wetland and it's bark mulch at this point. It's kind of a landscaped bed, it seems. So I guess I'm wondering if the commission, if the PIBs are getting established in that location and if the commission has any interest in kind of letting it go natural.
Yeah, so there's a PIB, is that outside of the PIB line that's being established, Joe? That former replication area?
As far as I can tell, that area is probably right about here. So
Okay.
we have no detail on our plans. Our focus was the activities associated with the septic system and the patio. So somewhere out front of the front door, based on that sketch plan, would put us right in here. So I don't have any information I can supply to you folks with regard to what that is and the proximity of that to the home.
Yeah, I can say we've been there 4 years, and we didn't add that. That was there when we had purchased the house, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't
No, that's fine.
build it out as much.
Yeah, so I mean, it looks like it's outside, this is gonna be the limit of work, right? So there's gonna be a PID established along this line. So, you know, it looks like that area will be allowed to reestablish anyways, Kim.
Okay.
So as long as you're fine with that.
We just want to continue the line a little bit to encompass that. With the PIV, I mean.
Yeah. Extend this out, you mean,
Yeah.
Melissa? Yeah, I think that.
I mean, I guess it's not
But,
on that plan necessarily.
Looks like, so here's this kind of,
What's the goal, Melissa?
just to make sure that,
So this line,
yeah,
Right,
okay.
just so that replication area isn't like an unknown area that goes to a garden someday, future owner.
Okay. As you can
Can I
see
just
from
see
that
this for a
sketch,
second,
yeah,
Joe?
sure, there is a walkway system that is out there that we would like to continue to maintain.
there's a little bump out right here in the house.
Yeah, I think that was our only concern.
Oh, I see, I see.
There's the potential the medallions are like right along that walk. There's not a ton of land that was finished there in the front of the house.
Yeah,
So I'm just looking at that plan there, the replication area looks like it was up in here.
Right, so that walk.
Yeah, so I think the line would go a little
Existing
further
there,
out.
So, I guess,
This has
the ability to maintain that walk and access to the front door.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that, but
Okay.
maybe like if it goes along,
Because there's the well, which is here on my plan. So
say
we're right
sediment
into,
trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not more, where the well is depicted, it's probably not more than 20 feet anyway, where it just hits woods, and it's just completely overgrown, so it really doesn't, that's already pretty much a wood line right there in the existing. Then the mulch kind of goes out, so that's where they're mentioning it's overlapping. The woods go straight up along that wall, and then down and around, so that's the area that's mulchy right now. But again, that was how it was when we had purchased it.
So maybe if we just follow the
394.
394.
I mean, it appears that this
Has that
includes
same
this.
yeah,
Has
that
that in
same
it.
shape, yep.
So,
See, that's
so it's
further up
mulch.
here, though, if we're looking at that. That's
Yeah,
in
but
there.
that, yeah,
well, it's
It's
not,
394.
on the line of the home.
Oh,
where
okay. Oh,
That
interesting.
side, the line of the home, that's, we're north,
so is it up here?
so, right, that's,
Yeah, I mean, this area is definitely already wooded and wetlands.
So where's the mulched area that would have been
right,
replication?
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on here, can you?
Oh, yeah, it would be right there,
Okay.
Jim, where you're pointing, yep.
Is it planted in mulch or just?
There were probably 5 shrubs there, like larger shrubs, more.
Mulch it every year or whatever?
We have since we moved in because it was mulched when we was there, so we just kind of maintained status quo with that.
Extend it out a little bit further.
I would just follow so it looks like the older retaining wall is,
Would be that light gray crosshatch under there.
is there.
Correct.
So then if you just follow the 194, I think, topo, so it'll come,
So rather than coming
or
down
from
here.
here, no, oh, there's the edge of the wall, so it would go, like from here, it would just kind of go,
Yeah, I mean, if
You know what I
we
mean? So
went
there's
like
the wall
that,
right
that's
there.
going to go into the walkway probably. So I think it's a more of
that
an
one,
angle.
It's gonna come up like this a little bit more.
and just kind of merge in with the,
So now, as we kind of,
the walkway
this
must be
out.
right here on this,
if we take
PCB,
that
right?
behind the well,
Yeah,
so that if there's ever a maintenance
Yeah,
issue,
yeah, yeah.
we know
Yeah,
back
that's a good
before you
point.
folks to access that in an emergency. If that same thought process included getting
Yeah,
to this side of the
Yeah.
well,
that makes sense.
whatever distance the group would feel appropriate, 10, 15 feet.
Yeah, that's the access point they've been using now because it was really the only way to get there.
Right.
So that would be great if we could preserve that.
And that'll also take some of the doubt out for Matt going forward if we were to establish some kind of number in there to put everybody on the spot. But if we were to go and say 15 feet off the well, something like that.
It sounds like we need a PIBs on a plan so we can see, you know, kind of what we're looking at.
I mean, we're definitely fully on board with, as you've seen, super accommodating as far as anywhere we're disturbing, making the accommodations, doing the erosion control, everything.
Yeah.
We're a little more concerned where then we're talking about like the entire wetland line along the house where we were not going to disturb it. We were going to keep it as is when we bought the house. So I guess that's
I think it's more, we more look at it as on the plan and then it lives with the house and then the next owner theoretically sees it on the plan.
Right.
Even more for future owners than for you.
But I think that makes sense, Joe. Let's bring this up further, maybe extend it out 15 feet further this way. Also, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it behooves us, Pat, to one more. I hate to kick the can down the road. The construction timeframe's looming, but take the opportunity to look at it one more time in the site to really fully understand what it means for the future of the front yard.
Sure.
And identify that in the plan and come back, see the group.
I think too, just to have on the plan that either note them for all or a note that the PID is the erosion control barrier line.
Right, yeah. And
So that it's in
we have a general note
perpetuity
on
moving
one of these
forward.
other pages that we'll be following the limit of work with the PID.
With the okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's on sheet 2.
More question on my end. Is it possible, because the only reason we're doing the septic now is we realized we wouldn't be able to get in there once we did the pool stuff.
Right.
Is it possible to get approval for that portion of the work to allow that to start rolling while we sort this out? We're running out of runway for this year, and I have kids who are staring at a poured pool that is not moving forward, so I'm trying to get something in at some point this year. So is it possible to get approval for the septic while we iron out the medallion lines in those front areas?
Unfortunately, we can't do that. You know, it's just one permit.
Okay.
So, but if we take, you know, if we can get this, if we get this resolved, you know, I think we can close this out at the next meeting.
Okay. So there's nothing else that sticks out for this then?
I'll open up to the other commission members, but, you know, I think that's really the only sticking point right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Apologies for that. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. So I'm just going to motion to continue this out to our next meeting, which is June 7th.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you. So can you just pass that back down to Kim, please? Thank you. Okay, Polivi, 6 Leon Way, this is a continuation of the notice of intent for an in-ground pool. Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
And for the record, Ryan Rosine with Goddard Consulting.
All right, Paul, be homeowner.
So I think Kim is going to pass out the updated plans, and there's this one here. So after last couple weeks ago meeting, we did end up shrinking the patio and the overall permanent impact to the buffer zone. We decreased it by 160 square feet for a total of 510 square feet of permanent impact, and so that also means the temporary impacts also decreased. There's also along the south and east ends of the pool, there's an 18-inch wide stone trench to allow water that is going to sheet off of the patio to infiltrate into the ground and not flow over, down the yard and down that slope. The slope has also been changed to a 5-to-1 slope, so now it's even shallower. And we've put on the plan the red dots along the PIB, so those are the additional PIB along the existing PIB and then continuing along the current limit of lawn. And so those are the changes we've made. I think that they're in line with what the commission requested, reduction of the scale of the project. And with that, I'll take any questions, but we're hoping to be able to close this out this evening.
Okay. All right, thank you, and I'll open up to comments from the commission.
I have a question about what's on the screen. Is the one on the screen the one that we're looking at, Kim?
Yes.
So we're muttering over here, just trying to understand. The orange brick is the current plan for the patio. Yes?
Yes.
The gray underneath it is the old plan?
No, the gray is an 18-inch wide stone trench
Oh, okay.
that goes on the south and east sides to allow any water that's going to flow off of that to be able to infiltrate into the ground.
So we don't see the old outline?
No, the old outline is not on there.
Can you just remind us what was the size of the original proposal?
It was 38 by 50, but it was also shifted south by like 6 or 8 feet.
Yeah.
So we not only shifted the pool north by 6 or 8 feet, but we also shrunk the overall dimensions and the pool deck size.
The old one is also beneath that one.
Oh.
So if you just unflip 2 sides,
We moved it as close to the water line as possible.
yeah, so the overall size was reduced and we shifted it a little bit to the northwest. So there's 160 square feet less of impervious surface in the buffer zone.
Okay. Want this view?
So looks like there's a new, the back section of this grassed area is gonna go natural?
This is.
Because it's got a,
So this is already the naturalized area.
okay,
So we're just keeping the PIDs all on that. That was last approved during the past NOI.
yeah, okay.
So-
Okay, I was wondering, I was thinking this line was one, but no, it's just, okay.
And they're spaced 30 feet apart as required. So.
So if I may, Jeff,
Sure. Go ahead, Ted.
I like some of the changes. I'm having a hard time seeing that the pool is actually shifted to the north.
So the pool used to be,
As I look at where the stairs are here versus here, that distance there, there.
Yeah, so
Look at the existing deck.
yeah, that's the best way to
Oh,
tell
okay,
it.
so the top didn't shift, the bottom shifted up.
Yeah, so this
Right.
whole side shifted.
I was thinking the whole
Where
box.
they took where they took off from the original was here,
Right.
and where they took off from the original was here.
the north long
And
edge of
the
the
pool
pool.
itself has shifted, but the top end of the deck stayed the same.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
because you can
So
see.
that line didn't move. The pool moved up.
Yeah,
And
yes.
this bottom one.
Yeah, because you can see the bottom of the pool
Okay.
kind of comes there, and now it's
Yeah,
No.
no, I can see that.
And it's a 6-foot perimeter as requested at the last meeting as well. That was the size that we went with.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the commission? Kim, so is this suffice as the plan?
So,
that was provided?
yeah, I believe so. I would just point out, Lucas Environmental has not had a chance to review this plan, because of the late submission, but based on their last comments, their comment letter, all of their kind of comments were resolved previously, so I don't think that these impacts have a substantial
Shouldn't really have,
change.
yeah, I
In
agree.
terms of Lucas's comments.
Yeah. That's my sense too, Kim. Okay.
I mean, we could ask Tom.
Right, I mean, I know there's a lot of discussion at the last meeting, where you guys got into the details. Joe wasn't at that meeting, but, you know, if you guys are comfortable with it, you know, I think, it sounds like you guys really went through it at the last meeting.
Yep.
And if you're all comfortable, you know, I think you can proceed. But I would just note, we didn't look at this, we just got this yesterday, and just didn't have a chance to go through it.
Understood. Okay. All right, questions? No one in the audience? Okay, if I can get a motion to close and approve the plan as submitted for Leon's Way?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, folks. Thank you for working with us on making the changes.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Good luck with the project.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Okay. So back to the work session items, the asset 12 Linden Street, this is a COC request. Kim, is there anything that we need to talk about on that, or is you recommending that we issue that one?
I am recommending an issue. Lucas Environmental did go out in January of this year, and they had 3 main comments. There was some bare soil in the backyard that had some light erosion. There was 2 PIB medallions that seemed to be further into the woods than originally approved. And then there was a drainage outlet just beyond the erosion control barrier, in which the as-built did not show what was actually draining. So in your packets you have a 11 by 17 of the updated as-built. So Anna and I went out. I found that the soil that was not stabilized had been grassed and is now stabilized. We moved the PIBs to the appropriate location, and Joe Mark went out and picked them up and now show them on the plan accordingly. And the outlet structure that you see kind of in the back of the house has been identified as outletting a perimeter drain. And there's a little bit of kind of like rip-rap stone at it. It doesn't seem to be draining a lot. There's no erosion in that location. Obviously it is slightly beyond the erosion control barrier, but overall I felt that this was a good complete application and that the remaining items were resolved.
Okay, great, thank you. Any comments from the commission? Okay, if I get a motion to issue the COC for 12 Linden Street?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you, Kim. Wall Street Development, 0 Leonard Street, cease and desist discussion. So you want to give us an update, Kim, on your observations?
Sure. So, brief history on this. Mr. Petrozzi of Wall Street Development reached out to the building department to get an excavation or a foundation inspection, which triggered my inspection of his property on or about the 5th of May, to which I did find an excavation. If you recall, he has 3 single-family homes permitted in that subdivision. So there is a provision in the Concom's order for the subdivision that basically states that housing units cannot be started until the stormwater system is considered fully functional and installed. So I decided to issue a cease and desist on the housing start because it has been our opinion and our experience with the backing of our engineers, Beta Group, that the stormwater system was not functioning as designed. That kind of triggered Mr. Petrozzi to make a lot of changes on the site to the stormwater system. And then we had a re-inspection with Beta on, it was May 17th or 18th. Beta came out and did a re-inspection, and that's the letter that you have in your packet. And they made some findings. The major findings was that the site was regraded to match the design plan and maintain positive site drainage. The level spreader was rehabilitated. The spreader trench is level at elevation 501, and a low spot behind the trench was removed. And then Beta did an analysis on both of the basins, the one kind of in the front and also the one in the back. And they found that they've both been enlarged, so it should not have an impact on the capacity of the site for water retention. There are still some outstanding items that were existing as of Beta's letter. And the major ones are, they're perceiving that there is some silt in the treatment basin in the front of the driveway that should be removed. There was an additional PVC pipe that was found to be discharged into that front basin, and we understand it was installed across Leonard Street, underneath Leonard Street, when Leonard Street was expanded, so that needs to be identified, the source, and then shown on an as-built. And at the time of the inspection, we found that 3 out of the 4 caps, there's emergency maintenance caps in the detention structure. 3 out of 4 of them were capped, 1 was uncapped. So when the pipes are uncapped, it kind of allows water to pass through rather than to be detained. So one of Beta's comments was that all the caps should be secured. There are some construction debris that were deposited in the wetland that we have asked Mr. Petrozzi to remove that have not been done. And as you're all aware, the erosion controls at the site have been and continue to be in a state of disrepair. I completed an inspection today, and I'll pull up the photos. So I found today, I'll just scroll through these, that the cap on the detention basin had been secured. So now we have 4 caps. This treatment basin is the one in the front. I do not believe that it has been cleaned out. We are also noting that it continuously holds standing water. It was, from what I understand from Beta, it was excavated a little bit deeper than the proposed design. Such that it will probably continue to hold water. But again, the design capacity should be equal. So these are some of the deteriorated erosion controls. You'll notice he did install, as of today or yesterday, another line of silt fence. That's kind of reestablishing a limit of work for his workers here. And he's been able to stabilize kind of the slope here that leads down to the stormwater infrastructure. So the deteriorated erosion controls are now kind of being trumped by this set here, which is installed properly.
Okay.
This is the swale, which has been regraded appropriately so that it pitches towards the drainage basin. This is a stockpile that Mr. Petrozzi has on site, which he installed silt fence around to protect it from eroding into the basin at the request of Beta. And here is the regraded basin and the level spreader with the caps.
Is he planning on taking the stockpile off-site at some point, Kim? You know?
I do not know.
Okay.
The erosion controls at the outlet of the level spreader continue to be in a state of deterioration. And I do also want to note, when we were on site, we saw Mr. Petrozzi with a poured foundation and forms in violation of our cease and desist. So he is continuing to work out there.
Okay. So we have it in the public record that the cease and desist is still in place, but yet, in that it was put in place prior to any foundation work being completed. So the intent was that we didn't want foundation work being initiated until the cease and desist was lifted. So, it's in the public record now that the work has been done in violation of the cease and desist. And I think, Kim, if we can just put a memo together to that effect for the project file.
May I ask, is the DPW cease and desist also still in effect, or was that lifted? I know that's not our purview, but
I was not aware there was a
I thought that I
DPW
heard
cease
that
and
in the last
desist.
meeting, that there was one from both us and DPW, but maybe I missed it.
Oh, that was the building, department, so,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep, no, the building department, we'll try to work together a lot of times.
Yeah.
So the building department, what they were doing was holding Mr. Petrosi's foundation permit. Legal counsel advised building to issue their permit
Okay.
and rely on conservation's and, enforcement capacity.
Presumably, that's what he took then, as the green light to do this.
We did go out there together, the building inspector and I, and he, we very clearly tried to explain that while he has a permit for a foundation, I was simultaneously issuing him a cease and desist. So, I don't think that there was a
misunderstanding.
confusion, yeah.
Yeah, question.
Sure.
Go
ahead, Jim.
Yes.
So, maybe I missed this, but since the cease and desist from the building department and from us, everything that I'm looking at, the footings, the forms, and they also placed the wall concrete yet? But
Yeah.
and that was all after the cease and desist?
So
Or
this-
were the footings already in and then the cease and desist?
This would have occurred about May 17th or afterwards. So within the last,
The date of the
Five.
site visit when there wasn't any foundation?
yeah, so when we went out with Beta, there was not a foundation.
And then we issued the cease and desist on or about,
May 5th. So on May 5th was the cease and desist.
Okay.
We had the inspection with Beta on the 17th or the 18th.
And that was not there.
That was not there. There's a hole for a foundation, but it wasn't poured.
When I walked the property on about the 13th or 14th, there was a hole with gravel, but no cement and no bolts or anything.
concrete.
It's hard for me to speak on behalf of Mr. Petrosi because he's not here, but I think, what he did was surmise based on Beta's inspection that the stormwater work that he had completed meant that he was, the stormwater was functioning and that he therefore met the requirements of the order.
Regardless of receiving a notice that the cease and desist was lifted.
Yes.
They can take it out.
That'll buy it.
I did ask him to be in attendance tonight and he declined.
He's watching it on the iTunes.
Okay, so Kim, it sounds like there's really kind of three outstanding items that need to be addressed in order for us to be comfortable with lifting, or the three outstanding items that need to be addressed. Erosion controls, there's still a couple areas where they're not properly installed, need to be replaced. The sedimentation basin needs to be cleaned out per Beta's recommendation. And then an updated as-built that shows that drainage line underneath Leonard Street that's discharging to the detention basin along Leonard Street there.
I have a question about the as-built. Is the as-built required for issuing a COC, or is it required for a occupancy permit or a foundation permit? I guess I'm wondering if the as-built plan.
The as-built plan is required for the COC. I do not believe that it's required for occupancy.
Oh, if it isn't, it should.
So it's COC.
So maybe we don't need that.
Otherwise, the building department, if it's not required, the building department doesn't have an as-built, which
They get a
Thought they did.
foundation as-built. Yeah, they get an as-built of just the building foundation, which obviously wouldn't be enough for us.
Not the site plan, just, how do you?
Well, I'm just thinking
Okay.
the as-built
how do you
is kind of like the
setbacks?
final sign-off, right? Because there's obviously still a lot of work to be done. The sediment basins could get filled up again, you know.
Yeah.
The erosion controls could get driven over between now and then.
So we
I
don't
actually
necessarily need that as a condition to formally lift the cease and desist order. Is that what you're
Right, I'm
thinking?
thinking the as-built isn't something to lift the cease and desist.
So
No, that makes sense.
I pulled up an email from Mr. Petrozzi. He's basically stating that the cease and desist relied on condition number 68 and HCC's order 33, which is true. That stated that the stormwater management be installed and fully functional to the full design capacity prior to the construction of any housing units within that phase of development. And, you know, stating that during the inspection on May 17th, significant work had been completed to bring the stormwater management elements into compliance. So I think he may have some pushback if we try to hold him on, you know, erosion controls or an as-built.
I'm sorry,
Chair, I
this
have
is
a question.
Yes, Ed.
So, Tom Terry was in talking about water on his property. Has this work corrected that problem, or does that still exist?
I don't think we've had a significant rain event since this work has been done, so it's tough to tell.
Our engineers are telling us there's a, oops, sorry.
Pardon?
I think the plugs were probably installed since that discussion. So I don't know if that'll make the difference. It could make the difference.
Yeah, because it was basically just flowing
It's
right
just
through the
going
spreader
through.
trench.
I mean, our engineers are telling us substantial compliance, major improvement. Or at least, you know, constructed to the original approved design.
But not total compliance. There were still, they said, I thought, a couple things, like the silt and the, so it's not total compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a cease and desist to get it to be done right.
It did.
I mean, the other thing, do we have any leverage for holding some fines or something to be released potentially at the end of the project when erosion controls and basin is cleaned out prior to final as-built?
So I guess the question is, can we fine?
I don't think
He's
so.
not asking for a COC, he's
No.
far from it, isn't he?
Right.
So, an as-built is done when everything's built.
Yeah, I don't think we can require
would
the
you talk
as-built
about
at this
that?
point.
Hang on, let me pull up the fine
Why are we
section.
talking about that?
And I don't think we can, you know, from a enforcement and compliance standpoint,
Actually, that might be in the planning board conditions, right, to have all the drainage infrastructure cleaned before it's
There is
turned
a,
over?
there is
We
a
can
bond with
require it.
planning board.
Oh, okay. If-
We can require it before the COC is issued. But in the meantime, I guess we want to make sure that they actually work. Must be one hell of a mosquito breeding.
well, I think the cease and desist is being ignored. The work is going forward.
Safe to say.
So, I guess the question to pose to the commission is, you know, in good faith, you know, do we have Kim reach out to Mr. Petrozzi with, you know, a compromise of, you know, we'll go forward with the cease and desist, we'll go forward with lifting the cease and desist, you know, and our expectation is that the erosion controls will be repaired where it's in disrepair, and the sedimentation basins will be cleaned out. Does that make sense, Kim?
Except that the guy doesn't tend to do what he's supposed to do, so if you lift the cease and desist with the expectation he's gonna do X and Y.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And there's no ramifications for ignoring a cease and desist? Like,
If it's,
It did, he did.
unless it's
do
not
something.
stable, it's stable, right? And the site's stable, right? Even if we have some large rain event, we think it's gonna be stable, right? So then, no, we just can't do any more work. And by the way, in order for the building department to give any occupancy to all the wetlands, all of our stuff, you can use the COC from us, right?
Not unless
You
specified.
can, they'll give an occupancy permit when, really?
Yeah, that's why we get places where the people live in there and they don't get boundary markers and things like that, and PRDs, et cetera. And then we find out there's sheds and patios and gardens and things where we're not supposed
Well,
to.
I mean, maybe that's a rule, but the building department's well aware of this project. So perhaps they make, sort of an extraordinary exception, even though the rule, the common practice is not to require it. They're well aware of our permit. And, maybe they can hold up the occupancy until he's done with everything else. Because the risk is that he gets the occupancy, he sells the places, gets the occupancy permits, and then doesn't do any more work.
And that's why I really
Doesn't
wanted
finish
to
the
do
work
the
that he
cease and
needs to do under
desist.
ours.
I wanted to have a line in the sand, like, hey, you need to fix the stormwater situation. That's why I didn't hesitate to issue the cease and desist at the foundation, because I wasn't sure what other milestone the commission would have the teeth to be able to enforce him to make some improvements.
So Kim, if we lift, so going back to, kind of a compromise, if we lift the cease and desist, there's nothing that's preventing us from issuing another cease and desist at some point going forward, right? Prior to someone, and if we just put a cease and desist on the property prior to him selling it, that's gonna prevent someone from wanting to buy the house, right? I would think. I mean,
The COC does come up in the title search.
Yeah, you would think that a real estate attorney would see that there's an encumbrance, our order of conditions. It would not let the sale, would advise their client, we gotta wait for this, for you to get this. So that would put it up, I would hope. But it doesn't seem to happen all the time. Somebody's obviously not doing a very good deed search, title search, but that's what should be holding up a sale is the COC.
right, but that's not,
From a legal
that doesn't happen. Right,
Yeah,
right.
I
So we established
continue to
that.
wonder why.
But I guess what I'm saying is, since that doesn't work, if we have a cease and desist on the
Cease and desist might work
property,
better.
you'd think that would, a real estate agent would say, hey,
What would we be cease and desisting at that point if he was done with construction?
Occupancy. Or transfer the property. Transfer the property.
that's not our purview, though, that's the only thing.
Check with town council. You've never heard that before.
May I back up with a question, Jeff?
Yeah.
You use the word compromise. I don't understand compromise when he gets his way. That doesn't feel like compromise to me. That he says, you put a cease and desist order on us and I'm going to ignore it. And the compromise is, we'll let you ignore it. Please fix those things we've been asking you to fix for a year.
It seems I'm not agreeing to compromise, but it seems like it did incite action.
It's not
Because he
completely,
fixed-
according to Beta, fixed. And he's certainly ignoring other things we've asked him to do.
Right.
He continues to.
Right.
I'm open to suggestions.
Can I ask a different question just for a second? The new erosion controls that you showed that are off of Leonard Street, I have not walked over there since those popped up. Are those full-on straw wattles right along the, right, I think,
Yeah, like the stockpile. And
are they the silt fence straw wattle, the whole thing?
They're
the
just,
new ones?
They're just the silt fence. The
So
silt,
no straw wattles.
No, it is towed in.
Here's the reason I'm
But,
asking.
yeah.
I can see the garbage, the old ones, being left there forever. And I don't know if our cease and desist because of stormwater management covers that. But he sure has shown that he will ignore all of our polite requests over and over again. And I can see that garbage, and there's a lot of it sitting there forever and ever. What I would like to, and I don't know how to enforce a cease and desist if he's pouring concrete. I don't know how that works. I don't know if Hopkinton's finest roll in and I don't know, pull spark plugs off of trucks. I don't know what happens. But if I knew how to enforce a cease and desist, what I would want to say is clean everything up. Everything. We have been asking politely forever.
Or releasing the one that we have.
Yes.
I'll go for that.
But again, I don't know how to enforce it if he says, I'm just going to ignore this. I don't know what that next mechanism is.
So why don't we do
So it
that?
could be an idle threat, even if you wanted to make the threat as strong as I would like to make it.
Yeah, so why don't we do, I guess, let me throw this out there. To that point, Ted, why don't we say, have Kim draft an email to Mr. Petrozzi, just reminding him that the cease and desist is still in effect. We expect the material to be removed from the wetland area, the construction debris, the sedimentation basins to be cleaned out, and the ECPs to be repaired up near that other detention basin in the back behind the
borders the
spreader
area
level
property.
trench. And between now and the next meeting, maybe we should reach out to town council and ask them what our options are for enforcing a cease and desist when the contractor is ignoring it.
There's no, fine sort of thing, basic thing, you got a cease and desist and you do X, Y, Z, you weren't supposed to, and we whack you on the side of the head and say bad boy, or we whack you in the wallet.
Well, my recollection is we issued an enforcement and compliance order and fines on this, didn't we?
We
Earlier?
issued an enforcement order. I don't believe we issued fines. So the reason why we didn't issue fines is because the fine structure is based on impact and alteration to resource area or buffer zone beyond the permitted limit of work. So unless and until sedimentation occurs beyond the permitted limit of work on this project, that would be the trigger that would allow the commission to do the fines.
Okay.
And that's not happened on Tom Terry's land?
He is getting volume. It is clean. I think Mr. Petrozzi has gotten extremely lucky in terms of, sedimentation events to wetlands.
And then if I may, Kim, one additional thought on that picture. I presume, especially since the old erosion controls are worthless anyway, I presume that straw wattles are probably called for along that silt fencing?
Yeah, they're completely buried. Yeah, they're there. They're just buried.
No, I mean along the new, there are buried straw wattles along the new fence?
No, not along the new fence.
That's what I'm saying.
on the
I
old
assume that
fence.
straw wattles ought to be installed along the new fence as well?
I mean,
Or because there's all that grass, is it not necessary?
because this is technically an extra second layer, it's, this erosion control is not even something that's shown on our site plans. It's obviously beneficial, but it wouldn't be,
But if the first broken down ones are removed,
yeah, it
or
would,
repair, I mean,
it would be
one or
highly
the other, they either
encouraged.
should be removed or repaired, right?
Yeah,
And if they're removed, does the new one become the first barrier of defense and needs the full treatment?
yep. Yep, I would say yes.
Tom, have you ever had any experience with a situation where a contractor ignores a cease and desist?
Usually, the problem with cease and desist, it's not like an order that gets recorded onto the deed. So theoretically, a third party coming in, they just want to get a lot. They're willing to buy, they might be willing to buy a property like this where not all the approvals are in, and then they work out a deal, maybe set up an escrow to still purchase the property, and they'll deal with it later. Usually the enforcement order route has more teeth. However, I mean,
to Kim's point, we haven't had an event yet where we can
Right,
issue an
so-
enforcement order, right? So that's
Right,
kind
but
of
all
a
your-
conundrum.
it's a conundrum, and, I don't know, you just gotta stay on them, and hopefully you'll do the right thing, but, your only leverage is the COC, and is there one order for this development, or is there
Three
Three orders for
four.
each lot.
There's four of them, right?
Or
One for
four.
each lot, and then the one for the drainage. I mean,
Maybe he'll build it quick, and then when he wants to close that one out, then we.
the other thing I'm concerned about too is if we don't get this resolved sooner rather than later, I mean, Kim's going on a maternity leave. So, it's not gonna be looked at as closely. I mean, I guess it can be, right? We'll just have to, as a commission, stay on top of that.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
So I respect and I feel deeply and personally the commission's frustrations. And I have experienced the callousness of the contractor to my face. That being said, one of my tasks as your administrator is to try to also keep you out of trouble. Mr. Petrosi is very litigious. And, the cease and desist is a blunt tool that's not typically is a temporary tool. And it really is, with the advisement of our town council, was put into place based on the specific provision in the order that talks about substantial compliance with the stormwater system. There is a argument that may be made by Mr. Petrosi if the commission decides to try to keep the cease and desist for erosion controls or an as-built plan, in which he kind of says this is outside of the scope of the cease and desist. I've complied.
And the key word there is substantial compliance.
Yeah, I think, let me pull up the wording.
I kind of thought you were going to offer a lot of that, which is why I said I don't know if we can take the erosion controls as part of stormwater. I would like to, but I don't know if we can.
So the wording is installed and fully functional to the full design capacity prior to the construction of any housing units.
Okay, but substantial and fully functional seem to be in disagreement to me.
So I guess the question is, do the erosion controls influence the functionality of the stormwater system?
No.
No, but I was wondering about the silt that is building up in one of the ponds.
The silt is a good question.
Right, that's
Yeah.
one. I figured the erosion controls probably didn't apply.
Yeah.
That was a hopeful complaint of mine. But the silt, that's what I'm wondering. It doesn't seem to be fully functional.
Right. I think
Beta has said, no, you've made good progress.
the silt may be, the only item left that might constitute functionality for stormwater.
In Beta, yeah.
I think it's hard, if it's holding standing water, it's hard to tell that it's, even that in itself, is it functioning?
Mhm.
I mean, usually those are designed to empty in 72 hours.
Right, but the problem with this one is that it was excavated basically to the groundwater table, right, Kim? Maybe even a little bit below the groundwater table.
That's what I
So it's
understand.
never gonna, it's always gonna have standing water in it.
Right, so it's not installing as designed, it's not
No, it's-
functioning as designed.
If it's not functioning as it should function, is that not a,
But I think it was designed that way.
It looks like Beta's comment is that it's been enlarged over the design. So it would not have an impact on the capacity of the basin.
Where is the smaller retention basin supposed to drain to?
So it is supposed to drain just outside of the wetland. This is the Intrium as-built.
So it's meant to dribble out there toward the north, but not flow into the wetland.
Yeah.
So the signs I've seen of water running underneath the silt fencing is actually how it's supposed to work, as long as that's not getting to the wetlands.
And as long as that water is clear,
Right.
looks clean.
Are there wetlands flags within the wetland that are still there? Because I would be happy to follow that little stream to see how far it goes when it exits that little basin.
They should be there. They're probably pretty deteriorated at this point. So this is the exit. This is the outlet right
Right.
here. Yeah.
And the water flows underneath the fence there.
Mm-hmm.
So Kim, going back to your, recommendation or suggestion, I guess is your recommendation that we lift the cease and desist?
I
So-
would either lift it and, be clear to Mr. Petrosi that we expect this basin to be cleaned out before his construction is complete. He still has a lot of, cleared land, loose sediment. He still has a lot of earth moving to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can keep it in place with a specific provision that this basin needs to meet, either needs to be cleaned out per Beta's recommendation or needs to meet the design, the original permitted design.
And you feel like option B is safe legally?
With the caveat that I am not town council.
Right,
Just based on my understanding, I think it's a safer bet than, trying to.
Right, the whole kit and caboodle,
Yeah.
which is an engineering term, everybody.
Yeah.
Kit and caboodle.
Because you are an
I don't mean
engineer
to
now.
speak over your head, right?
There are
I thought it was cat food.
there's two separate things.
There's the kit, and then there's the caboodle.
Well, then there's electrical power.
All right, what do you guys want to do?
I vote for option B, unless town council tells us it's a bad idea.
I vote for town council reconsidering.
What was that, Jim? Sorry.
Never mind. Arbitrary.
Janine?
The, on town council's advice on these.
Ed?
likewise.
I disagree.
Melissa?
So the request on Wall Street Development will be to clean the sediment out of the basin as recommended by
Yeah, it's a request,
Beta.
but it has no
Well, it's not
teeth.
functioning, it's not
so to
functioning.
speak.
To come into
No,
compliance.
but we have no way, if we look at cease and desist, we have no way of enforcing.
No, he is keeping it in place.
We'll keep it in place until that basin gets
Okay,
cleaned out.
Okay.
I mean, that could be a day.
Jeff, are you comfortable with that?
I'm looking at the plan.
Because I didn't hear you vote.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the direction that the commission wants to go, then I'll support it, yeah.
And I will confer with town council on what happens when our cease and desist is ignored. That has not actually ever happened to me before.
Yeah.
Admittedly.
Yeah, I would be curious.
Yeah.
If we have any
I just have one question before, is this basin, like the area around it, as they continue construction, does it have the potential to be silted up again?
It would be more like tracking from trucks.
Okay.
And mud and stuff like that. But generally, this basin accepts runoff from Leonard Street.
Okay.
Okay. I
This
think-
collects the runoff that was reportedly always going onto this property, right? So at one point, we heard that Leonard Street, the runoff, all the flow from Leonard Street's been going onto this property, and that's the solution to that. Right?
I'm not sure that I can comment on that.
Yeah, that's okay.
May I comment? I don't
That's
think so.
fine.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah, you.
I don't want to.
I think that's what this credit trench was for, that.
Well,
There is, can we get a map?
Where's the,
There is still,
yeah, okay, I see that.
at the corner of that first driveway that's built, and the wetlands go down, right there is still a pipe that drains towards the silt fencing. That,
Oh, so that's where I was talking about.
right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
still
not-
going into the isolated wetland.
Okay.
So
I don't
this
think there's any pipe
No.
that goes into that basin that Kim is circling now.
this probably would be the stormwater mitigation for when the road was extended, right? For the extension of the road.
Yeah, there is a pipe going into that detention
Oh, there is?
basin.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I can't
that was
see.
recently installed.
Oh, okay, all right. But there
Correct,
is
Kim?
still that other
Yeah.
pipe
Yep.
that is at the
Yeah.
corner there.
That one still exists, you're saying?
Sure
Ted?
looks like it.
Yeah.
It looks like there's fresh rocks laid around the exit to it.
There is there is ongoing litigation regarding this pipe
Yeah,
and the
that's with the
runoff. So that's why I
DPW.
kind of am declining to make any definitive comments. It's currently in court with Mr. Petrosi, the DPW, and the box mill development.
Okay, so I think we know what direction we want to go. Kim, if we can just, ask Mr. Petrosi that, or let him know that we need that detention basin cleaned out, and then, once that's complete, we'll lift the cease and desist.
Okay.
Sound okay? Okay.
Do I have your commission's permission to kind of carry that out and make that decision once I get the visual that that basin has been cleaned out?
Yeah, let's vote on it too, just to memorialize it. I get a motion to that effect.
To that effect.
Just to keep things succinct.
What you said.
I'll second the motion to that effect.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I think we have one more agenda item. The Eversource tree pruning off of Chamberlain Street. So Ed, you had, I think, brought this to Kim's.
No, I think I did.
Oh, Ted did, that's right, sorry.
So I think that Kim will be able to explain much more than I, but it was brought to my attention, and I watched a planning board meeting. This has to do with the Chamberlain Wayland development and getting enough energy into that development. And so Eversource is over there, and they were talking to the planning board because it's a scenic drive, and they were hoping to remove initially, and again, Kim, take over any time, but initially the plan was, I think, remove 5 or 6 trees, but then when you press a little bit, it sounds like it's 20-some trees to be removed, and some pruning additionally, in order to get a new line of electricity into that back development.
From Chamberlain.
Yes, up Chamberlain.
As
from
opposed to
beyond.
Wayland.
Right. And in fact, I think in the planning board, there was some discussion about what are other alternatives can come in from other places. In any case, so as I listened in, and there is wetlands in the neighborhood, I didn't know if there was a place for us or not. And so I just brought it to Jeff and Kim's attention, saying, I don't know if we should be here or not, but it might be worth looking at. And even if we shouldn't be there, I thought some of us might want to know about it in case you're driving up Chamberlain and you see a whole bunch of trees in the wetland being chopped down. I thought it might be worth us knowing about it.
Another job for the Whitehall battery.
So that's what I know. Is there, other than the letter, is that?
Just the vigilante.
Yeah, so you do have a letter in your packet, and I can go over that in a minute. These are the extremely crappy plans I got from Eversource.
I know I'm
Sorry, Eversource. And you're right, the application that they filed under the scenic bylaw was like 9 trees. And digging a little bit deeper, reaching out to the representative at Eversource, it does, I think he mentions 29 is the actual application. That being said, there's a couple of things at play here. The first is that the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaw have some broad exemptions for utilities for them to maintain their lines for safety. So that's kind of why I didn't originally kind of jump at this project when it was presented to me. So there's also some of the trees, about 10 of them were classified with John Westerling as hazard because of rot or standing dead trees. And then I also reached out to Eversource to ask them, because I did hear from several abutters, like there are trees in the wetland that are being taken down, so for kind of clarification. And he's indicating that none of them are actually in the wetland. It does look like that to me when I kind of cross-check these plans with the GIS plans and look at where the wetlands are actually located. There are some pretty large trees that they're looking to take out. There's a 20-inch DBH hickory and a 15-inch DBH oak. But from what I understand, none of them are in the wetland, and Eversource has identified them or some of the limbs as being within that zone of safety for falling on this electric line. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But, you know,
May I ask a follow-up then?
Yeah.
And this came up at the planning board meeting, but it seemed like a good question. Is maintenance of utilities the same as installation of new utilities, as far as avoiding what we can do under normal circumstances?
Generally, we consider maintenance is if there's already an electric line there and they're replacing it, that would be maintenance. If they're putting in an entirely new electric line, that would be a new project.
Okay.
And Kim, you were gonna reach out to Eversource just to kind of reiterate, you know, if there's certain trees that don't necessarily need to come down, you know, if you can keep that, you know, be cognizant of that, you know, if there's pruning that can be done as opposed to removal, you know, it'd be the commission's preference, you know, if they could work with us. So there's not a lot we can do, but, you know, we can, Kim thinks that, you know, at least if we reach out to them, you know, we can put it in their head that, you know, we just want them to not just go in, you know, blanketly and cut everything down, you know, to kind of be selective about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, just a thought to them might be, just because a tree isn't physically located in the wetland, the canopy, eliminating that canopy still has an effect. Like the canopy might be over the wetland, and then you're kind of changing the condition. So
Yep.
that's part, you know, kind of. I wouldn't just look at like the trunk, the 15-inch trunk. I think the whole tree.
Through the chair, do we know, or can we query having the power come in Wayland, which was bandied about up here? Is there any reason that the power can't come in Wayland,
I do not know that.
which is not a scenic road as opposed to Chamberlain, which is?
But would that not just push the same issue over to Wayland?
Yeah.
It makes it sound like, I mean, they say in the letter that Verizon has installed poles that are several feet taller than the old poles on the road, and it's changing the height of the power lines, so there are already.
They're probably putting the poles right next to the ones that they're saying.
I do know
So
that,
there was talk of whether they could go underground or not, and I think the cost was prohibitive.
Oh, then it would have cost.
I would also just, I'd share with the commission, there is a site walk on Saturday, June 11th, if anyone would like to go. And obviously, the rules with site walks always is you can't talk or plan things, but
9 AM.
I'm looking at the town website. It looks like it's 8 AM on Saturday, June 11th. I think there's something later in the day, something with, maybe the parade, and so they had to roll it back a little bit earlier. Does touch a truck, is it?
Yeah.
That's not what they were talking about. I think they were talking about graduation parade.
You can't say you're more into.
Anyway, it's Saturday, June 11th at 8 AM. There's a site walk, meet on Chamberlain near the end, where the development is, not the Hayden Road.
Okay, thanks, Jay.
Yep.
Touch a truck would really prevent discussion from happening, huh? Sorry.
Oh, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Are they relying only on the GIS layer for determining wetlands, or did someone actually go out and look at these locations, do you know?
They are determining what's on the ground with their arborists, so it's not a wetland scientist, but somebody who's generally knowledgeable, but not, yeah.
Okay. I just asked because the GIS layer can be off by a considerable amount, and it doesn't catch everything,
Yeah.
so if you're doing a site walk, you might want to just look around and see if the wetland's really where they say it is.
Right, yeah, okay. That's a good suggestion. Okay. All right, anything else? I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you.